Oh yeah, watch.
Killing several members and set armed group identified as the Biafra Liberation Army reportedly attacked Ebubeagụ vigilante operatives and Asari boys in Umunze village, Anambra State, killing several members and setting their patrol vehicles ablaze. However, a critic denied the speculations that the Biafra Liberation Army is responsible for the attack. He accused Ikenga Uruagu of knowing about the planned attack ahead of time, referencing his earlier warning to Governor Charles Soludo to bomb Ihiala in anticipation of violence. The critics harshly criticized TVC News, accusing the network of bias, misinformation, and being controlled by Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, whom he labeled a drug lord and illegitimate leader. He strongly defends Simon Ekpa, rejecting TVC's portrayal of him as merely a content creator, insisting that Simon Ekpa is a freedom fighter and Biafran Prime Minister wrongly accused in Finnish court. The critic discredits Nigerian media outlets like TVC and Arise TV, accusing them of conspiring to defame Simon Ekpa and Biafran agitators while ignoring greater national security issues in northern Nigeria. The critic highlights terrorist activities in the north, kidnappings, killings, and control of multiple local governments, claiming that these crises are underreported compared to coverage of the southeast. There is outrage over perceived ethnic bias, claiming Yoruba agitators like Sunday Igboho are left untouched, while Igbo agitators like Simon Ekpa are vilified and targeted by state media. The critic insists that Simon Ekpa cross-examined witnesses and did not deny involvement with Biafra in Finnish court, accusing the media of failing to report these courtroom details truthfully. TVC presenters are personally attacked, called shameless and useless, and accused of selling out their integrity for money and spreading lies to please their boss, President Tinubu. The critic concluded by call for justice and urging Biafrans to resist propaganda, seek peace, and defends the Biafran cause against what they perceive as government-led oppression and media manipulation. The early morning sun was just rising over the hills of Umunze village in Anambra State when chaos and confusion swept across the quiet landscape. A group of armed men, widely identified by residents as members of the Biafra Liberation Army, reportedly launched a surprise attack on local security operatives. These operatives included members of the controversial Ebubeagụ vigilante group and another group known in the region as the Asari boys. What followed was a scene of violence, fire and panic that left many people in shock and sent political tremors through the region. The attackers moved swiftly, targeting the patrol bases of the two security groups. Within a matter of minutes, several patrol vehicles were engulfed in flames, and unconfirmed reports said multiple members of both Ebubeagụ and Asari boys were either killed or seriously injured. For many residents of Umunze, the attack felt like an inevitable moment in the escalating tension that has defined life in southeastern Nigeria in recent years. But for others, especially critics of the government and its media allies, the incident was a perfect example of what they believe is a deeper, more calculated political game. Among those drawn into the firestorm of accusations and denials was Ikenga Uruagu, a man whose name has come to represent both bold defiance and controversial rhetoric in the ongoing struggle for Biafran independence. In the days leading up to the attack, Ikenga Uruagu had released a video message in which he warned Anambra State Governor Charles Chukwuma Soludo to take drastic measures to prevent violence. In a particularly unsettling part of the message, he suggested that Governor Charles Chukwuma Soludo should consider bombing Ihiala, a region known for its historical tensions and recent unrest. That suggestion, whether made in metaphor or seriousness, came under renewed scrutiny after the events in Umunze unfolded. Critics immediately began to draw connections between Ikenga Uruagu's comments and the attack. They accused him of knowing about the planned assault ahead of time, and they claimed his words were not merely warnings, but signals of what was to come. In response to the speculation that the Biafra Liberation Army was responsible for the Umunze attack, one prominent critic pushed back forcefully. This individual, who remains unnamed but has a large following on social media, denied the claims and instead turned his attention toward Ikenga Uruagu himself. According to the critic, it was not the Biafra Liberation Army, but state-backed actors who staged the attack to spark confusion and further divide pro-Biafra sentiment. The situation was quickly muddied further by the way the incident was reported by major media outlets in Nigeria. One network that came under particularly harsh criticism was TVC News. The critic described the station as biased, dishonest, and ultimately under the control of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a man he referred to with venomous language, calling him a drug lord and an illegitimate leader. In this view, TVC News was not merely misinformed, but actively conspiring to defame individuals like Simon Njoku Ekpa, whom the network had reportedly referred to as nothing more than a content creator. That label, according to the critic, was an insult to the struggle of the Biafran people and to the sacrifices of those like Simon Njoku Ekpa, whom he described as the rightful Prime Minister of Biafra and a freedom fighter being unfairly targeted in a court in Finland. The critic painted a picture of a widespread media campaign designed to discredit Biafran activists while ignoring far more severe national security issues in northern Nigeria. He cited a long list of grievances, including kidnappings, mass killings, and entire local governments falling under the control of terrorists in the north, none of which received the same level of media attention as any event involving Biafran groups in the southeast. He pointed to the example of Sunday Adeyemo, widely known as Sunday Igboho, a Yoruba rights activist who, despite his controversial stance, was not subjected to the same kind of state-sponsored media vilification that Simon Njoku Ekpa and others faced. This, in his view, was a clear sign of ethnic bias and selective enforcement. The courtroom proceedings involving Simon Njoku Ekpa in Finland were another flashpoint in this unfolding story. According to the critic, Simon Njoku Ekpa had not only defended his actions in court, but had actively participated in the legal process by cross-examining witnesses. The critic rejected the idea that Simon Njoku Ekpa had denied involvement in the Biafran movement. On the contrary, he said Simon Njoku Ekpa stood firm in his belief and commitment to the Biafran cause. Yet, this narrative was allegedly missing from Nigerian news coverage, which the critic accused of deliberately suppressing the truth to serve political ends. The harshest words were reserved for the TVC presenters themselves. The critic did not hold back, referring to them as shameless and useless individuals who had sold their integrity for personal gain. He accused them of fabricating stories to please their employer, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and of spreading lies that endangered lives and undermined legitimate calls for justice. He called on Biafrans to remain vigilant and to reject what he described as a campaign of propaganda designed to demoralize them and erode the foundations of their resistance. He encouraged people to seek peace, but to do so without compromising their identity or abandoning their historical grievances. As the smoke cleared in Umunze and the full extent of the damage became visible, emotions remained high. The images of burnt-out patrol vehicles, bloodstains on the streets, and panicked residents trying to make sense of the violence began to circulate on social media. For many Biafrans, those images were not just evidence of another violent incident. They were symbols of a larger battle. A battle for recognition, for truth, and for a voice in a country where they felt increasingly marginalized. Local leaders in Anambra State responded with concern and caution. Governor Charles Chukwuma Soludo issued a brief statement condemning the violence and calling for calm, but he did not directly address the accusations involving Ikenga Uruagu. Security agencies were said to be investigating the attack, though no arrests had been made in the immediate aftermath. Meanwhile, community members in Umunze were left to pick up the pieces, bury their dead, and wrestle with a fear that has become all too familiar. The presence of Ebubeagụ in Anambra State has long been a source of tension. Created as a regional security outfit to combat rising insecurity, the group has faced serious allegations of abuse, extortion, and political intimidation. Many communities view Ebubeagụ not as protectors, but as enforcers of a state agenda that is hostile to Biafran aspirations. The Asari Boys, believed to be aligned with former Niger Delta militant leader Mujahid Asari Dokubo, are also viewed with suspicion by many in the southeast. Their involvement in local security matters is often seen as part of a wider attempt by the federal government to dilute the influence of pro-Biafra forces. In this context, the attack in Umunze was not just another violent incident. It was a flashpoint in a growing struggle between opposing visions of the future. On one side are those who believe in a unified Nigeria and see security outfits like Ebubeagụ and the Asari boys as necessary tools to maintain order. On the other side are those who believe Nigeria has failed them and who see in the Biafra Liberation Army a symbol of resistance.
You don't see them? And they have had. Yes.